They say the city forgets you faster than it ever knew you. In Chicago, that truth bites colder than the wind, especially when you've got no shoes. My name's Elijah, though no one really asks anymore. The sidewalks have known me better than any person has in years. I sleep on them, I eat beside them, I bleed into them, and yet they remain cold. It started with blisters. Then the leather soles I once wore cracked and peeled until the rain found its way in. One day I left them near a dumpster to dry, turned around to find a slice of bread, and never saw them again. Someone had stolen my shoe, and I understood. Hunger will make you take what isn't yours. Cold will make you run barefoot. Now I walk on torn skin. Cracked heels, blood-dried toes, and weather-beaten calluses that burn with every step. You ever walk through snow with bare feet? Try that in January when the concrete turns to glass. I used to be someone. A man who could fix things with his hands, doors, cabinets, even people sometimes. But now, people look past me like I'm fog on their window, something to be wiped away. This morning it rained. Not hard, just enough to soak through your clothes and humiliate your pride. I crouched under an awning near Wacker Drive, watching businessmen shuffle by in coats that cost more than my past life. And that's when I saw him. Jet-black car, the kind that hums instead of growls. Out stepped a man in a tailored charcoal suit that clung to him like power, his umbrella snapped open with the elegance of theatre, and on his feet, God, those shoes, polished, sharp-toed, kissed by rain but untouched by struggle. They were the kind of shoes you only wear if you've never had to walk in pain. I didn't plan to speak, I swear, but something in me cracked. I stood up, my legs trembling like matchsticks. I limped toward him, not quickly, just enough for the world to notice a wreck moving toward Grace. He turned to me, almost bored. The people around him backed up like I carried the plague. I looked at his face. No wrinkles, no weight of consequence, just clean success. I didn't ask for money. I didn't ask for food. I just asked, "Sir, do you have an old pair of shoes you could spare?" That was it. My voice barely made it over the rain. But he heard me. Oh, he heard me, and what he did next. I wasn't ready for it. He looked at me like I was dirt that had somehow learned to speak. The man in the suit, later I'd learn his name, was Vincent Maris, tilted his head slightly, the way someone does when they hear a joke they don't quite believe. His umbrella dripped slowly to the sidewalk. His shoes gleamed, perfect, not a single drop of mud or blemish, not like mine, or rather, not like my feet. "You want what?" His voice cut through the street noise like a razor dipped in condescension. People started slowing down, looking, whispering. I swallowed. Just a pair of shoes, sir. Any old pair." He blinked once, slowly, then he laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not the kind you give when you're confused or uncomfortable. No, it was loud, confident, cruel. The kind of laugh that doesn't just humiliate, it destroys. "You want my shoes?" he said, through his grin, his teeth perfectly white. "These shoes cost more than your entire life. Hell, I wouldn't give you my shoelaces." A woman nearby chuckled uncomfortably. A teenager pulled out their phone. A man across the street raised his camera. Vincent took a step forward, leaned in slightly, and said with theatrical flair, "You want shoes? Then earn them." And with that, he reached into his inner coat pocket, pulled out a crumpled dollar bill, and flicked it at me. It hit my chest and fluttered to the ground. "There, go buy yourself a sock," he smirked. Then he turned, stepped into his black car, and shut the door behind him with a muted click. The engine purred like money, and then he was gone. I stood there, drenched in rain and shame. My hands shook, but I didn't pick up the dollar. I couldn't, not after that. People had their phones out. Some laughed. One woman said, "God, the nerve of these people." But she wasn't talking about Vincent. She meant me. That night, the video hit social media. Homeless guy begs CEO for shoes, gets owned. The caption stung worse than frostbite. The comments were even worse. Why doesn't he just get a job? Bet he'll trade the shoes for drugs. This is why you don't give handouts. They want Gucci for free. They didn't know me, didn't know what I lost, didn't know that I used to have hands strong enough to build homes. But now they barely held me up as I crouched in an alley behind a 24-hour diner, knees tucked to my chest, my stomach empty, but my heart screaming. I pulled out an old, weathered photo from my coat pocket. It was faded and bent, water-stained, and nearly falling apart at the edges. It was of her, my daughter. She couldn't have been more than 4 in that picture. Pigtails, missing front teeth, grinning at me like I was the only hero she'd ever need. And somewhere out there, she was growing up, maybe laughing, maybe crying, but not with me. I held the photo to my chest and whispered to the cold bricks behind me, "I'm sorry." And the city, cold, uncaring, merciless, said nothing back. Before the streets had a name for me, I was just Dad, Elijah Dean, carpenter, husband, father. My hands didn't always tremble like this. They used to build things, good things, furniture, walls, dreams. I had calluses from chisels and splinters, not from crawling into dumpsters for warmth. We had a home once, nothing fancy, just a little rental off Ashland Avenue, a cracked front step, a humming fridge, a daughter who used to run barefoot in the backyard and laugh like the world belonged to her. And in a way, it did. Her name was Lena, and her laughter, it was the kind that made the worst days feel small. Her mother, Rebecca, had the gentlest hands I'd ever known. She made every scraped knee and every late bill feel bearable, but one day a cough turned to blood, and blood turned to panic. Then came the diagnosis, stage 4. Cancer doesn't just take life, it robs you before it kills. It drained her color, her strength, our savings, and finally, her light. I sold my truck, my tools, even my wedding band. Everything went into treatments. The rent fell behind. I took night jobs, stopped sleeping, started slipping. I still remember the final bill from the hospice, nearly $4,000 for a bed she died in. And just like that, the life we built collapsed. The landlord gave me 2 weeks to vacate. I packed Lena's dolls in a trash bag and told her it was an adventure. But even then, she looked at me with quiet suspicion. Kids know when adults are lying. Then came the court, the system. I tried to keep her, I fought to keep her, but who trusts a man with no address and grief tattooed into his voice? The judge said Lena needed stability. A cousin in Iowa volunteered to take her. I signed the papers with hands that bled from roofing work I hadn't even been paid for. I never saw her again, not since she was 5. She's probably forgotten me by now. I tried to get back on my feet. I really did. Temp jobs, shelters, soup kitchens. But when you carry failure in your eyes, the world won't meet your gaze. And when Rebecca died, so did my compass. There were nights I thought about ending it. Cold rooftops, silent bridges. But every time I reached into my coat pocket, I'd feel the paper. The birthday note. I wrote one for Lena every year. I never mailed them, just folded them up, tucked them next to her photo, and waited for a someday that never came. I didn't drink, I didn't steal. But shame? Shame is a slow poison that tells you no one wants to hear your voice. So I stopped speaking, stopped asking, until that day. The day I asked for a pair of shoes. Vincent Maris couldn't sleep, not that night, not the one after, not even with sleeping pills or the humming white noise of his penthouse's climate-controlled silence. It had started with the laugh, his own laugh, echoing in his head like a siren that wouldn't shut off. He told himself he'd done nothing wrong, that he was being realistic, honest. The man had asked for his shoes, for God's sake. What did people expect him to do? Hand over $1,000 pair of Ferragamos to a barefoot nobody? He almost convinced himself. Almost. Until his phone buzzed that night just past midnight. It was a text from someone he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. "Was that you in the video?" Vincent stared at the screen. The name was Nico, a name from a different life, a time when he didn't wear suits or own buildings, back when success was still a fantasy and ramen noodles were a luxury. He debated ignoring it, but curiosity or guilt got the better of him. "Yeah, why?" he typed back. The reply came instantly. "You don't remember him, do you?" Vincent blinked. "Who?" Another text. "The guy you humiliated, that's Elijah Dean." The name hit like cold water. Elijah. He hadn't heard that name in over 20 years, but it rang clear. Back then, Elijah wasn't homeless. He wasn't broken or barefoot. He was the guy who had saved Vincent's ass more times than he could count. When Vincent's old Dodge broke down during his second winter in Chicago, Elijah was the one who fixed it. No charge. When Vincent had nowhere to sleep after getting kicked out of his roommate's apartment, Elijah let him crash in his garage for a week. When Vincent landed a sales job interview and couldn't afford to look decent, Elijah gave him an old coat and polished up a dusty pair of boots until they looked brand new. And now Vincent had laughed in his face. He sat on the edge of his bed, the memories slowly crawling up his throat like bile. He tried to remember the last time he thought about Elijah. Truth was, he hadn't. Success had a way of burying inconvenient memories under million-dollar meetings and catered luncheons. Vincent closed his eyes. He could still smell the sawdust in Elijah's garage, could still hear Lena's laughter. That little girl with pigtails who used to run around barefoot while her dad worked with wood and made jokes. A cold sweat broke across Vincent's back. He had stepped on the man who helped him rise. And now the world had seen it. The next morning, he cancelled his meetings, sat in silence, ignored his assistant's questions. He opened his laptop and searched Elijah's name, but there was nothing. No social media, no address, just that damn video. Over 5 million views now. In it, Vincent saw his own smirk, slick, rehearsed, venomous. He shut the screen, his hands trembled. He thought success had made him powerful. But for the first time in years, Vincent Maris felt small. The cold in Chicago that night wasn't just weather, it was punishment. Elijah sat beneath the cracked concrete belly of the Harrison Street overpass, his body wrapped in a stained blanket that barely covered his knees. The wind howled through the metal beams like a ghost too angry to rest. The ground beneath him was frozen solid. His breath came out in short white clouds, each one slower than the last. But he wasn't thinking about the cold, not entirely. He was thinking about Lena. It was her birthday. He had kept track of every one of them, marked them by the seasons, the sounds, the changes in the city's air. April 15th, always April 15th. He didn't know what she looked like now, couldn't picture her voice, couldn't imagine her as a teenager, but her 5th birthday? That he remembered like it had happened yesterday. That was the last one he spent with her. That year he had carved her a toy bird from wood. It flapped when you turned the crank. She called it Charlie. She hugged him so tightly that day, said he was the best dad in the world. Now he was shivering beneath a highway bridge with cracked lips and bare feet. But still, he celebrated. He had found an empty pizza box the night before, tore it down, shaped it into a crooked circle, and drew candles with a dull pencil he kept for writing letters he never mailed. The cake looked pathetic, but it was something. He lit a small tea light he'd been saving for months, shielded it from the wind with cupped, trembling hands, and he sang, softly. "Happy birthday to you." His voice cracked. "Happy birthday, Mylena." By the time he finished, his eyes had blurred, but he didn't wipe them. He reached into his coat and pulled out the folded piece of paper. The letter. This year's birthday message. Hi, sweetheart. I hope you're warm today. I hope you feel loved. I think of you every day. I'm sorry I can't be there. I'm sorry for everything I couldn't be. You still make the world worth surviving. Love, Dad. He folded it carefully and placed it back in the inner pocket, where it would join 6 others just like it. Then, his vision swayed. The candle flickered violently. The cold wasn't just discomfort now. It was swallowing him. From his toes to his chest, he felt the ice creeping in. His fingertips were stiff, his lips numb. He tried to sit up straighter, but his back gave out. He slumped against the concrete wall and closed his eyes just for a moment. And in that moment, he let go of the hurt, of the birthday, of the shoes. The last thing he remembered was the smell of wet cardboard and a single flickering light. Then, darkness. They found him the next morning. A nurse named Melody was heading home from a double shift. Her heater had broken, and she was grumbling about the weather when she noticed what looked like a pile of rags beneath the bridge. Most people would have kept walking. She almost did. But something, maybe it was instinct, maybe it was fate, made her stop. She knelt beside him, touched his neck. He was still breathing, barely. His feet were purple, his face ghost pale, his hands clutching something inside his coat like it was life itself. Melody called 911. When the paramedics arrived, she stayed, followed them to the hospital, held his hand when they wheeled him in, still unconscious. That night, she couldn't sleep. She watched the video again, the one with the CEO and the homeless man. And this time, she didn't just see a broken man, she saw Elijah. And she made a decision. The room smelled of antiseptic and something softer, maybe lavender. The lights were low, the blinds drawn halfway. Machines beeped gently beside the hospital bed. IVs trickled fluid through Elijah's arm. His face, bruised and sunken, looked decades older than the man he once was. But his hands, they were still clutching something inside his coat. Melody, the nurse, had seen it when they first brought him in. The folded paper. The photo of a girl with crooked teeth and stars in her eyes. She hadn't pried, but she'd known right then. This man mattered to someone, even if the world said otherwise. Elijah had been unconscious for 2 days. When Vincent Maris walked into the hospital, he didn't wear a suit. No polished shoes, no assistants trailing behind. Just a plain grey hoodie, faded jeans, and the weight of guilt that made every step feel like glass. He had told no one where he was going. Had pulled up in a rental car, parked across the street like a thief returning to the scene. His hands shook as he walked into the lobby. The nurse at the desk recognized him instantly, the Vincent Maris, but said nothing. Maybe it was the look in his eyes, maybe it was the quiet apology radiating from him like heat off broken pavement. "Room 212, Melody said when he asked. "But he might not know you're here." Vincent nodded. "That's okay, I need to see him." And he did. When he stepped into the room, the first thing he saw was Elijah's feet, bandaged, bruised, still raw from frostbite. Then the wires, the oxygen tube, the sunken cheeks, but it wasn't the pain that hit Vincent the hardest. It was the photo, still clutched in Elijah's hand. He remembered that little girl. He remembered her giggle when she'd stolen his sandwich that one summer day in Elijah's garage. He remembered thinking that this man, this father, was everything he himself wasn't. And he had laughed at him. Vincent stood frozen. He didn't speak, couldn't. There were no words good enough to patch over what he'd done, what he hadn't done all those years ago. So he sat. He stayed in that room for nearly an hour, just watching Elijah breathe. At one point, Elijah stirred, opened his eyes briefly. His gaze flickered toward Vincent, cloudy and confused. Then, back to sleep. He didn't speak, but Vincent did, quietly. "I remember, Elijah," he whispered. "You helped me when no one else would. You gave me tools when I had nothing. You believed in me before I even believed in myself." Vincent looked down at the floor, at his own scuffed sneakers. "I don't expect you to forgive me. Hell, I don't even know if you'll wake up." He stood, reached into his coat pocket, pulled something out, and placed it on the bedside table, a shoebox. Inside was a pair of handmade leather boots, not from a designer brand, not expensive, but crafted by hand, by a man Vincent had hired that morning from a small shop on the south side. A man who still worked with wood and thread and time. The card beside it read, "For the man who once gave me everything." Vincent left the room, but he didn't go far. 2 days later, he returned, this time with more than shoes. He brought Melody into a quiet office, laid out a plan, spoke to hospital administrators, called in lawyers, made arrangements that involved nothing flashy, no headlines, just help, real help. And when Elijah finally opened his eyes again, fully this time, he didn't see cameras. He didn't see strangers. He saw a warm bed, a familiar face, and the boots. But Elijah didn't ask about the shoes. He asked only one question, his voice cracked but clear. "Can I, see my daughter?" Melody smiled. "I think we can make that happen." 3 months later, no one recognized him. The man who now walked with quiet strength and a slight limp wore simple clothes, soft leather shoes, clean hands, a trimmed beard. He had a new place, small but warm, a mattress, a table, a second-hand radio that played old jazz. No one handed it to him. He helped build it from the ground up. The nameplate by the door simply read, "E. Dean, Craftsman." Elijah had been working in a non-profit woodshop, teaching kids who'd never seen a hammer how to build something from nothing. He didn't talk much about his past. He didn't have to. The city had tried to make a story out of him. From homeless to hopeful, or something like that. Reporters knocked. Vincent's PR team offered interviews, documentaries, even a book deal. Elijah declined them all. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want to go viral again. He just wanted his life, this quiet, earned life. The boots Vincent gave him, he wore them once. Then cleaned them, boxed them, and dropped them off at a local shelter. "I won't walk in another man's guilt," he told the staff. "But maybe someone else can walk toward their own second chance." Elijah chose his own shoes, not expensive, not flashy, but they fit. And he paid for them with his first paycheck in years. He had written 7 letters over the years, one for each of his daughter's birthdays. He reread them often, memorized them, folded them perfectly and stored them in a worn envelope he kept tucked inside an old wooden jewelry box he had made by hand, but he never mailed them. Until the day he opened his front door and found a letter waiting. It was addressed simply, "To Elijah Dean, I think I know who you are." Inside, the handwriting was young, unsure, nervous. "My name is Lena. I saw a video about a man who asked for shoes. Mum used to talk about someone named Elijah. I have a memory of a man building me a toy bird. It flapped its wings. You sang happy birthday like it was magic. Are you him? Are you my dad?" Elijah sat on the edge of his bed for a long, long time. Then he stood. He didn't cry. He just walked to the little closet in the corner, opened a shoebox sealed with time. Inside were a pair of tiny pink shoes, scuffed, old but still whole. The last gift he ever bought for her. She'd never worn them. He'd never had the chance to give them. Now, with trembling fingers, He took the shoes and placed them in a small brown parcel, along with every letter, along with one more. Fresh, short, but whole. I never stopped loving you. Come find me if you want to walk beside me now. I'll wait. Weeks later, he stood outside a modest house in the suburb. Not his, but familiar now, nervous, hopeful. The door opened. She looked like her mother, eyes like firelight, taller, older, still leaner. No words were exchanged right away. He opened the package, held up the shoes. "I kept them," he whispered. She didn't speak, she just stepped forward and hugged him, hard,